Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sarah Martin with The Contoured Chemist. We are ready for another giveaway. I believe this is day 6 since last time I had the wrong date in the intro. So yeah, day 6, this one's a big one. You're gonna wanna stick to the end. We are going to be doing brushes and of course, giving away a brush collection. So I'm gonna show you guys how I recommend using each brush. We're gonna talk a little bit about 3D foundation and eye brushes today. So if you wanna check it out, please keep watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for being here. Okay, friends, it's another giveaway day. I'm excited because I am a huge fan of our brushes. If you haven't noticed, in my opinion, they can make or break this makeup and your daily application. So I'm gonna share with you guys how I like to use each one, and I'm giving away 10. And this is definitely way more than comes in the brush collection that you can actually purchase. So this is the rose gold, my version of the brush collection. Be sure to watch to the end so you know how to enter today's giveaway. So let's get right on into it. When I was trying to figure out what we're gonna do today, I looked back and I'm like, man, I have done so many brush videos over the years. Obviously, our brushes haven't changed much. We have gotten a lot more. We do have an entire line of Demi brushes, which I talked about last year, and I shared every single brush, and it was an hour and a half. So my goal is to not talk that long. So we're gonna stick just with 3D brushes and also a quick eyeshadow tutorial because we do have fantastic eyeshadow brushes. Instead of talking about troubleshooting, which I've also done before, I'm gonna kind of show you why you might want or need every single one of these brushes that Seint has in their collection for 3D foundation. And then I'm gonna show you, we're gonna do a quick application. I'm gonna show you how I use each brush on the daily. After 7 years of trial and error, if you've seen any of my older videos, you probably have noticed I used to use some of these brushes every day. You can probably tell how my look has changed. It is a lot to do with your personal preference. And some of these brushes I don't use every day because I no longer prefer a more full coverage look. But on those days that I need full coverage, you better believe I actually pick them up. I just show you guys how I wear my makeup now, which is mostly I want a skin-like finish. And so if that is your goal, I'm gonna show you which brushes you need to make sure you have in your collection in order to achieve that. And then if you're a full coverage girly, I'm gonna show you the best ones for that. So maybe we'll just do half my face, which needs full coverage at the moment. More full coverage, and the other half we'll just do it like I usually do. This side's looking not so bad. This side needs help. Let's just we'll kind of split this up and how to use each brush for natural full coverage, which ones you need in your collection depending on what you want. And if you're like me and like to switch it up on the daily, you like natural one day, you want a little bit more medium coverage the next, what to have in your collection so that you can easily adjust. Because in my opinion, the brush is the only thing I change. The brush affects how much you're picking up. And so the brush is the easiest thing to tweak the kind of coverage you're getting, not your colors at all, not even how you like dip in really, it's just the brush. And so it makes it so much easier, but sometimes it's easier to show. Motion of the brush does make a difference. Let's go through every single brush and when you would use that. All right, let's keep things simple to start with. The brush I use every single day. In fact, I'm gonna show you guys which brushes I recommend having 2 of. And yes, I use 2 of these brushes every single day. You might be able to tell which one's kind of stained which color. And if staining bothers you, get the brush cleaning soap. It turns them white again. Doesn't bother me as much, so I just use the brush cleaner because it's the fastest and I'm lazy. But I did clean all of my brushes today, so they are sanitized. All right, so blush, bronzer. This brush, you guys, I can't tell you for how many years I used this brush and I didn't use it for highlight. And when I finally discovered the magic it is for mature skin, now it is my most recommended brush for anyone that wants natural to full coverage, especially if you have mature skin. So I always have 2. I don't really need 2 of these ends, but I do like to have 1 end just for blush, 1 is for highlight. So if you are using a color corrector or even just a main shade, you can easily use this brush because it is so soft and the shape of it will let you buff on. So think of buffing as when you want to get the least amount of product on your face as possible. This is when you want to color correct large areas of your face or you want natural coverage. And so this is what I recommend. I'm just going to barely touch my color corrector. You can see, since my brush is clean, how very little actually got on the brush. And then I'm just going to small circles and I'm gonna work it into that area of the face. So this is gonna be my natural side and I'm just gonna hit the high points first, which is forehead, cheeks, which I don't know if you could tell before, I'm having just one part of my face has been suffering from a little rosacea flare up this week. So, and then I'm gonna even buff it down here where I have hyperpigmentation, definitely here on my chin. It's really hard for me to just do this on half my face. And even here, which is lighter, doesn't really need color correction per se, but is where I have texture. That's from years of breaking out on my chin. Hormones are so fun, right? Okay, and then I'm gonna buff on to my nose there. Let's do the same thing on the full coverage side. This is a brush you don't see me use very often. I'm always asked about it. The reason why I don't recommend it is basically because of beginners. And because the hardest part of this makeup is learning how to pick up the product on the brush and not over apply when you're beginning, this brush just is so much more dense than this one. And I don't know if you can tell the end, it's much smaller, it's more dense. I find it more difficult because people want to use this end for highlight and just this end for contour. That's not how I recommend it. So the 3D brush, I'm going to show you using this end, which is more similar to this end. We're gonna use this for color correction, okay? Now it is gonna pick up way more than the blush end. So again, I'm just going to barely touch it, okay? And you'll see that it picks it up on one spot. So it kind of means that I'm gonna have to like distribute it better and buff. Same motion. Okay, this brush really does buff in a really nice way because it's very dense. But because it picks up more product, it will lead, look at that. I accidentally touched it with a little bit too much pressure. It doesn't help that I'm sitting in the sun. My creams are starting to get warm, which if you're in a cold, dry climate, that might be helpful. But for me, they soften really easily. Okay, you can probably tell they're about the same. I feel like I got a little bit more over here, which is expected with a brush like this. We're gonna go back to the natural side. This is a brush I will be honest, I was not on board with when it first came out. This is the blend brush. So this one is originally designed for powder illuminators, which is why this end is so loose, because it was designed for powder. It took me a lot of experimenting before I figured out how to use this brush in a way that worked for me. So I'll get to this end in a second. I'm gonna use this end. I do like this end. It is dense and I like small brushes for more detail, okay? Now, I'm gonna use this to cover all those places that I could not reach with this big brush, which is like in any nooks and crannies and around the eyes. This is going to be still my color corrector. I'm still dipping in lightly and I'm still buffing on, okay? Because this end is dense, it still buffs on. Not all of these brushes actually are good at this buffing motion. And so it's kind of important to know which ones are good to use for color correction and which ones aren't, because if you're using one that doesn't buff well, you're gonna be applying too much color corrector. And what happens is then you come to me and you're like, Sarah, I look orange. You shouldn't look orange in any way, shape, or form. If so, you're applying too much. And usually that's either you're swiping into the product or you're using a brush that's not distributing it properly. It's kind of just pressing it on and leaving it in one spot, and you're not able to move it around and really shear it out almost. Okay, so I'm still using this brush on those small areas of my face, and now I'm gonna go into those dark points like inside corner of the eye. I like to use this one on my eyelid to get rid of all of those veins. Okay, and then now I'm gonna use the smallest amount possible, almost like a wash, okay? So I'm using very little pressure. I'm not really buffing right now. I'm just lightly adding some color because my under eyes are really light compared to my face that really like is concentrated with lots of hyperpigmentation and redness. So I have to kind of add some color there and add some warmth so I don't have these like raccoon eyes of light. Yes, we want light in certain places, but we want our skin tone evened out. So we're gonna kind of tone this area so the contrast is lower between this area of my face and the rest of my face. Does that make sense? Now, once I've done that, I'm gonna use the same brush, but now I'm going to skip to the pressing phase, okay? So remember, buffing, small circles, okay? That's gonna distribute it over a larger area. It really lets you like shear out that product, get very little, which means more natural coverage. The opposite, when you're pressing, you're gonna use, again, it needs to be a somewhat dense brush. You can't exactly press on as easily with a brush that's floppy. You can, but it has to be used in a different way. So this brush, I'm going to then go back and I'm going to press on where I need more coverage, which is certain parts under the eye. Not necessarily the entire under eye needs this much product, but the darkest points under my eye does. Okay, and that's mainly this inner corner here. And then I'm barely touching. Remember, right after you wash your brushes, it picks up more product, so I have to be careful. And then I've got hyperpigmentation. I've got some dark spots right here that need more coverage. I'm gonna make sure that redness, that rosacea that's flaring up has enough product there. And then I'm gonna hit these darker points of hyperpigmentation and a few in my contour line. Melasma mustache, PIH, which is post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation after you get a blemish, those stinkers. Okay, so this side, I'm good. I'm fully corrected, okay? Let's move to the full coverage side. Same premise applies. I'm gonna go ahead and pick up the contour brush because it's the only brush I'm gonna use on both sides of my face, actually. It has a detailed end that I can use in the same way. So the blend brush and the detail brush both have these smaller brushes. I'm gonna use this side in the same way as I just used that one over here. Still buffing at first in the smaller areas, and then we'll go back to the pressing motion as needed. Okay, now we press. The difference between the small end on the detail and the small end of the blend brush are minimal in my opinion. And so to me, it just depends if you need the other end of the brush or not. This one, I think everyone needs. This one, I'll get into in a second, but that would be the most natural coverage. So pressing on hyperpigmentation, blemishes, and under the eye. All right, so we are done with that detail work now. We can go into our main shade. So now we've got our color corrector fully on. We got good coverage going on already, but let's even out the skin tone, kind of tone down the warmth of that, and kind of really get the coverage we're looking for. So on this side, if you want the most skin-like finish, I would say pick back up the blend brush. If you're wanting more medium coverage, pick up that blush brush again, okay? Choice is yours. That's why it's good to have both in your collection. I don't really like this for color correcting this end because it doesn't distribute product well, but for natural coverage, again, if you use this brush in a certain way, it still works. If you tap in to get the product on the brush, now you'll see this brush picks up the least amount of product of all of our brushes, all right? So then you can use that end and simply tap. Okay, again, we don't want to move around the color corrector we just placed. So this will distribute that highlight and kind of even out your skin in the least heavy way possible, all right? Same thing goes with this end, and tapping into that main shade, and then you can, again, press on, and this will lead to a little bit more full coverage because this brush picks up far more product than this. So just switching out the brushes, you can easily tweak the kind of coverage you're getting. Now, you can even go all the way up to full coverage with this. You would most likely just tap in, press on, tap in again, press over that area again, so that you're building up the product in thin layers and you're going from medium to then full coverage. Same thing, and this switching back to the small end and pressing on anywhere more detailed that needs more coverage. All right, let's go back to the full coverage side. Now, there's a couple brushes that I think could do this. The one I just showed, which was the 3D brush, I would still not use this end. I would still use this end, okay? And so you would then go into your main shade with the rounded end, and again, just tap in and then press on. Okay, because this end is more dense and you're doing the pressing motion, it is going to lead to more coverage. Now, probably the most infamous brush for full coverage is definitely the buff brush. I don't like the name because this brush does not buff well. So if you're trying to use this for that first step of color corrector, this brush tends to pick up way too much product, way too much. Don't even attempt it. And it actually takes a really long time to distribute that out. Now, this brush is probably more time consuming than a brush like this that has a larger surface area. I could probably get a faster full coverage look just using this brush and dipping in more times, because this brush doesn't cover as much of your face, but this brush is going to pick up more. So be careful. This brush makes you, because of the angle, makes you feel like you can swipe in, but don't. Tap in to get that product on part of your brush, and then sometimes you can see the product hit your skin. If that is the case, you're most likely just tapping in with too much pressure. You don't want so much product on your brush that the one place you're gonna touch your face, you can then see it. Because this is a main shade, you can't do this and try to move it around. You don't want to pull, you're gonna just streak the makeup and actually give you less coverage. So this brush does work really well to tap on the product, a little bit more heavier than other brushes, but the key is kind of like picking it up and making sure you're still not getting too much. Okay, and so once you've tapped that on all over, you should be more or less at that coverage you're desiring. The brush I would pick for both sides, always and forever, the detail brush. I don't contour without this brush. And yes, you can contour with technically almost every single brush. Probably wouldn't use the eye brushes, but you can contour with all the others. Is it the best option? No, especially if you're color correcting, because you can really draw on a stripe with any brush, but then you have to work really hard to blend that out. So in order to blend out a harsh line, you have to have a dense brush, okay? And a lot of these are just gonna move all of your coverage around and tends to leave your contour either so blended it's hard to see, or leaving anything under it kind of exposed. And so this is the only brush I use for the methods I need for my face. Otherwise, I just see dark spots and my contour looks patchy. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in with the detail at an angle into my contour. I'm gonna pounce it on half of my brush. This light is so bright today, I feel like nothing looks accurate on camera, but that's okay. And then we're just gonna kind of tap along the imaginary line, and then just keep pressing to blend as well. So we are applying and blending at the same time, which is why this brush, in my opinion, is a game changer. Oh my gosh, it looks so much darker on camera. The time change is not great for my office because the sun is beaming on me. I'm sweating, and it wasn't like that before the time change. I'm gonna have to remember this part of the year. Okay, use one of your highlight brushes to kind of clean up edges. Same thing along hairline. blend into the hairline and then down on the forehead. And along the jaw. This large end is amazing for nose contour as well, because you can use that flat end to draw a stripe, and it's already pretty much straight. So if you have trouble with drawing a straight line like me, this brush helps. And then I'm gonna flip it around to the other end. I did switch to my cool contour for my nose. Okay, and then I lied, I'm not gonna use this brush for this side. I told you guys I was, but since I'm always getting questions about this brush, so the 3D brush, I color corrected, main shade, also showed the buff with this main shade, but this end was originally designed for contour. You can use it for contouring for sure. Now, in my opinion, because this brush is straight, it gives more definition to your contour, and this does not because of the way it's shaped. But I kind of tweak it by flattening it a little bit, because when it's puffed up, it's very round, right? Oval, but you guys get the point. Now, you can flatten it and give it more of that line, so it's not going to be too wide, but it's going to fit that cheekbone better. So I'm gonna flatten it out and do the same thing with half of my brush and still tapping it. I feel like it just doesn't pick up the product the same way, so I'm tapping it a little bit more. Okay, so you can still contour with this. It just gives a little bit of a more diffused look, in my opinion. So if you want a defined contour, I always recommend that detail brush. But this brush is really good for blending. I mean, I like how dense and soft it is. Because it's very dense, it blends all of these areas really well as well. So now it is time for brightener. On this side, either one, I would say the small end of the blend or the small end of the detail. Since I just used that for contour, I'm gonna use this small end for blend, and I'm just gonna kind of tap in and tap on. You never want to swipe this on. It will move all of that hard work you just placed. So I'm going up to that contour line, and I'm avoiding all of the crinkles and just trying to hit where I have the shadow and next to my nose here, okay? If you really wanna do a focused nose contour, I'd actually recommend one of the eyeshadow brushes. My favorite nose contouring brush is actually the Smudge, and I'd use the flat end for these two lines and then this dome end. If you can get a straight line, which I'm not very good at, you can use that straight end to just go down, and it's nice and dense, yet it's kind of got a little bit of a point to it, so it works really well. Otherwise, I tend to use my finger for that because any other brush is too large. The only other brush that works really well is the multitasker, but you have to have these like the steadiest hand, or you will see and it'll make your nose look crooked. So I definitely say the most detailed nose contour brush would be the Smudge. All right, I'm gonna go to the full coverage side. And here is where, again, I'm gonna give you an option of two brushes. Both of those I consider more full coverage brushes. So the 3D brush, this pointed end, I see so many people use this for their main highlight shade. They use it for the main, their brightener. And I see so many people with issues of over application because this brush is awkward, to be honest. This end is awkward. It's kind of floppy, yet it's dense and it's pointed, which makes it great for under the eyes. But for on the face, people tend to swipe it because you can't buff a pointed brush. And the product gets really deep into the bristles and you tend to lose a lot of product. So the only thing I recommend this end for is for brightener. And it's only if you really are just going to brighten your entire under eye and you're looking for more of a full coverage brightening effect. Same thing goes for this end of the buff brush. So it's just a smaller version and it fits the under eye really well. But again, it is so large, both of them, that you can't just concentrate where you might have a shadow. You're gonna be applying that brightener across the entire under eye. It is definitely a more full coverage, but if you have problems with creasing and over application, it's not gonna be your friend. That's when I would recommend going to a more detailed brush and really concentrating on using less product. So if you're gonna use this brush, just make sure you are barely tapping in. Try to use just the tip and then you can just press it on like so. And I like being able to use it for that inner corner right there. But again, it's gonna pick up quite a bit of product. Same thing goes with this. And if you've seen older videos, this used to be my ride or die brightener brush for years until I really learned, like even more so, less is more sometimes, especially as we're aging under our eyes. So this definitely though, if I'm really needing a full coverage look, I'm gonna use this brush. So we're gonna pounce it on, we're gonna avoid areas of texture the most we possibly can. And this is going to really give me a lot of coverage here on my dark spot, which is probably why I was always using this brush. But you can kind of tell the difference of how much product that is. It just picks up a lot more. So if you like full coverage and you really want to get that full coverage effect, the buff brush. This brush I find much harder to tap on, but it fits under the eyes really well. Okay, all right. I have to use the Perfector. It's technically not a brush, but can't do my makeup without it. You can probably tell this side really needs it. This side is better, yet I'm already creasing because this is my bad eye. You guys have a bad eye, good eye? This eye has way more lines under it. We all have it. So we're just going to pounce this all over. Now you'll notice because it's not too damp, it is not gonna fully take away all this full coverage, but it's really gonna help, especially under the eyes. And I've been talking too long, so my sponge is a little bit too dry. I can tell already. Okay, if you go for full coverage, you really want to focus that sponge anywhere you have lower points of your face. Okay, so before I talk too much and that moves and creases again, we're gonna set it. There's only one brush I ever use to set under my eyes, and that's because if I use anything else, I can't control the amount. A floofy brush doesn't really press on the product, And I just lied. There is one brush. If you do not use both ends of this brush for cream, like I just did, the buff brush makes a fantastic powder brush, okay? Because the ends, because of how dense, they're very similar. This one's just kind of wider, but I definitely have used this in times I didn't have my powder brush with me. So this one's just a little bit more tapered. This one's a little bit more round, but same premise applies. You can just tap in and tap it on. But I don't recommend it if you've already used the product for cream. It's gonna gunk up your brushes super fast. So I keep my powder brush only for powder. No creams ever touch this end so that it is designated for powder. I can simply touch it, control exactly the amount for each under eye, so I know I won't crease and it's not gonna age me from over application. Then I can go in with more. Oh my gosh, my eyelids have already creased. And one more and we're almost done with all of our face brushes. So what's left? Blush, of course, my favorite. So what are some good blush options? I already told you I keep a blush brush. 2 of them. So this one's highlight, and I always use this one for blush. It is the perfect brush in my opinion because it blends at the same time. You can totally just apply by pressing. I use Spellbound because it's leaving. Sunday, December 17th is the last day, and I don't know when it's gonna come back or if it will. And so we're gonna just press on a little bit of that color while I can still wear it because it's a fave. See, you don't have to move any product around. You can just simply tap it on. So easy, easy to control. Full coverage options, you guys probably know by now, I never dot on blush and then use a more dense brush to kind of blend it around because why? I just covered a lot of things right there. It's gonna uncover all of them. So you need a brush that you can press on the product that isn't going to move things. The rounded end of the 3D brush actually does well. Again, this time, instead of squishing it, you really wanna floof it out. And again, remember, this will pick up way more than this one will because these bristles are denser than these. So you just gotta be careful. But I would say one of my favorite brushes for blush is actually the other end of the powder brush. This end, this kabuki end, it's nice and flat and a really perfect size for blush. So if you don't have the blush bronzer, say you don't use bronzer ever, but you need your powder, this is a great end to use for blush. Same thing, we're just tapping on to apply. Okay, so we just want to look for a soft enough brush to kind of tap it on, not so dense that it's gonna just put the product in one part of your face that then you have to work on blending. Same concept as contour. Don't want it so concentrated. Finally done with all the face brushes. Let's go ahead and finish the face real quick with Illuminator. Now, if I'm gonna use a powder illuminator, I would use a clean blend brush, again, because this is designed for those, but I don't use it if there is cream on the product. Again, it's gonna mix with those powders, make a mess. So I'm gonna pick up the Perfector again, swipe in generously, and then I just kind of tap that on the upper cheekbone. Okay, face is done. Let's go ahead and finish off with our lips. So there are a few brushes, like I said, that I use 2 of. And one of those is the multitasker. I always have a multitasker that's stained red that I use for lip and cheeks, and then I always have one covered in eyeshadows. Now this end of the lip brush, I also use for if I need more coverage in spots. After I perfect, I always will go back and be like, okay, do I need more coverage? And then I use this tiny little multitasker brush. And then I'm gonna add more coverage where needed. If I need a little bit more mane, sometimes I just tap it on with my finger, or you can have a multitasker just for the face if you're covering a lot of blemishes, and then you can use that flat end for your highlight or powder. Gold. Now I'm gonna pick up the multitasker. I like to use the flat end both for lining and for lips. You can use this small end. I just like the control of this straight line. So I'm gonna use Suede. I'm gonna use just a little bit of that Spellbound as a stain. Have a balm on your lip first, it'll kind of just stick to it. Then I'm gonna use a generous amount of what? Sunshine State, of course. All right, so let's just finish up with the eye brushes. Easiest one, brows. There's only one brush I ever use for the brows, and that's the line brush. This angled, very dense end is perfect for drawing on brow hair strokes, filling in however you like to wear your brows. So all I do is lightly dip into my eyeshadow. I'm gonna just trace that bottom line up to the arch, down to the tail. Repeat for the upper. And then just dip in and fill. Once my brows are done, I feel like a new woman. Anyone else? Okay, blend with the spoolie end. I like to pick up the big fluffy end. Oh my gosh, we never use this end for bronzer. Obviously, bronzer brush. Let's add a little bit, shall we? I completely forgot about bronzer. I like to swirl, so I just kind of dip into a little bit of each because I've got Bella, Glow Illuminator, Heat Waves. I kind of dip into each, then I kind of swirl them all together, get that on my brush. And then again, I'm just gonna tap because I don't want to move product around. Okay, it's the only brush I would recommend for bronzer. All of the other ones distribute too much. Then you have to blend it. Again, moving coverage. Back to the line brush. Spoolie to blend. Line brush, also amazing for liner. When you want a defined line, that is the brush I use. Let's do a quick eyeshadow look. The eyeshadow brush. Honestly, the only brush I really could not live without to do eyeshadow from all of ours. I could figure out ways to do everything except line my eyes. But in all honesty, if you have eyes anywhere close to mine with mature lids where you need a really fluffy brush so you're not moving that skin around, it's the eyeshadow brush. I could do my whole eyes with this besides lining my eyes. And so this is the one brush I have to have. I honestly keep 3 of these in my daily use because I always use one brush for application, one clean to blend. It's a game changer if you haven't tried it. All right, let's go ahead and carve out our crease with the eyeshadow brush. Big fluffy end, and then we're gonna flip it over and use the small end to halo. Okay, and I'm gonna just flip it around, use that brush cleaning towel, and then dip in my highlight shade. So far we have Bubba and Drift. Just gonna use some staple shades today. Now, if I want a really light hand of something, you can still use this fluffy end and just kind of use the end and put a wash of color. Like so. That's Tawanda. If you want a dense application and really want either shimmer or the color to really stand out, that's when I'd say grab the multitasker, this flat end, or this more dense flat end of the smudge brush. So I'm gonna use the smudge brush and Peppa and just tap on a little bit more of my lid shade, my 2 shade. Okay, give that color. And then this dome end of the smudge brush is my go-to for outer corners. So I'm just gonna go in to little cocoa. And I'm just gonna start tapping. And then moving that into the crease. I love this brush because all you have to do is press on and press to blend, similar to how I use the detail brush. These ends are designed for as little work as possible. And if you have mature skin like me and you can't be, like there's no such thing as a buffing motion on the eyes because your eyelids will move around, then it's all in learning how to use these brushes. So press the dense ones. The only one you can really just utilize the brush bristles to do that washing motion is really gonna be this eyeshadow brush. Everything else is more of that pressing motion. Okay, and then last but not least, I haven't shown the multitasker for eyes. This is like my probably most used eyeliner brush because I tend to really prefer the more smudged out liner look. I use this end if I really want a precise line with, say, Black Friday eyeliner, or I would use the line brush. And when I want to set that with a shadow and smudge it out, I use the big end. Now, caveat, we just got a brand new brush called the Etch, which has this flat, dense end, which is made for tight lining. And then this smaller end, which I've been obsessed with because it's like a shorter version of this, in my opinion. Like the way I just use the end of this brush to press on and smudge out liner is like how I can use this brush. So if you have this brush, I haven't tried it yet. This end has been on repeat for me. I really haven't used this end as much because I don't tight line because of my lashes, but I'll show you on each eye how I use it. So I'm just gonna grab, let's use the small end, and I'm just gonna use a little Black Friday eyeliner along the upper lashes. Just a quick smudgy line to give more thickness to the lash line. Okay, and then I'm gonna flip it around and use my Ride or Die Revival. I'm gonna press it on over that line to set it, and then use just that small corner of the brush lightly on the lower lash. Okay, I'm gonna use the same thing with this small smudgy end of the new etch. It doesn't cover as much surface area, so it just takes a little bit longer. But it does give you a little bit more control since it's smaller. Okay, friends, there you go. There are all of the 3D brushes, how I use them for a full face, which ones I recommend for natural or more full coverage, how to use them, how to tweak your application depending on the day. The easiest way to do it is using your brushes. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you will go enter that giveaway. I will put all the deets below the video in the Dropbox. Click the little arrow, it'll open full caption showing all the details of what I used, as well as how you can enter to win your very own Seint brush collection, as well as also how you can get color matched if you're needing help with your Seint 3D foundation, or if you're ready to try it. Tell me how you like to wear your makeup, any issues you might be having, and I'd be happy to help. As always, I appreciate you guys watching and being here. Stay tuned next week for another giveaway. Love you guys.